has a turn even if I seen it. Been driving all along, feel like I'm dreaming. Okay.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, Vocab Malone. Welcome to Street Apologists Live. This is a show where we serve the underserved and look into the overlooked. That's right. Today is Wednesday, March 15th, 2023, and the time is a little bit after 5:15 here on the, West Coast, because I'm on Pacific now, being in Arizona. I just picked this up, and so I thought, might as well do it now before I forget. I've been trying to get my hands on this for a while now, and it has a very insightful revelation. What am I talking about? This old journal, it's called Judaism, a quarterly journal of Jewish life and thought. This goes all the way back to summer of 1959, volume 8, number 3. You could pick this up for $1 a copy back then. And I turn to the table of contents. I see the board of editors. This guy, that guy, this guy, that guy. And published out of New York City, You could subscribe to it. And here's something interesting. The passing of Jewish secularism in the United States, Emil Durkheim, Jewish universalism, the Messiah in the writings of Levick, 89th Psalm, Einstein's concept of God, Thomas Mann's Job Jacob, American Jews in Israel, music and dance and Hasidism, Steinhardt, Master of Black and White, Survey of Current Theological Literature, The Commandment Keepers, Albert Ehrman, page 266, back in 1959, you had some mainstream Jewish scholars who wrote about the Commandment Keepers, which is the congregation that inadvertently spawned One Westism when Edward Meredith Bibbins left and then established something that became known as One West. Edward Meredith Bibbins, by the way, is the one that the One Westers ignorantly call Abba Bivens. Turn now to page 266. And I'm going to go ahead and do a little spoiler. There's a few things in this that are noteworthy. The big one is this, ladies and gentlemen. Hebrew Israelites used to determine what tribe you were from by your birthmarks. Now the One Westers use the 12 tribes chart. There's been reports of people prior to that who used astrological signs. But this article, which is primary research, a study of the field, I think what you'd probably call ethnography these days. These guys used to tell you what tribe you were from by birthmarks. Let's read this article. This is going to kind of be an academic-y show. There's going to be some words in it that I don't feel comfortable saying, but this is what people wrote like in 1959. The Commandment Keepers, a Negro Jewish cult in America today. Albert Ehrman. Let's go. I'm going to read the footnotes as well because they're important here. Are you ready? Thank you, Jay Fry, for the first super chat of the day. You help make this worth it because this stuff ain't easy and a lot of people ain't feeling it. So I give you much love. Thank you very much. For real, Jay Fry. Shout out to you. Here we go. The largest and most well-known of the black Jewish cults in Harlem today is the Commandment Keepers Congregation of the Living God. The group was organized by its present leader, Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew, an alert, forceful, and intelligent man, 58 years of age, dark brown, who through claiming a DD as well as a PhD degree, this man claimed to have a PhD, is self-educated beyond elementary levels. And I think there's a typo there because they're quoting Brotz's book. Not Brotz's book, but one of Brotz's article, Howard Brotz, called Negro Jews in the United States from Philon, volume 13, December 1952, page 325. And it should say, I believe, though, not through. And I do have Brotz right here. Check out my Amazon review of this, but the beginning half is worth it to read. Important book. So they're quoting Bratz there. Here we go. Woo! Thus has H.M. Bratz described W.A. Matthew, leader of the most powerful black Jewish cult in America today. This paper is devoted to the history and evolution of the Commandment Keepers congregation under Rabbi W.A. Matthew. So you already see some of the issues here. Commandment Keepers, you know. I don't want to devolve too much into theology, so let me keep going. Wentworth Arthur Matthew was born in Lagos, West Africa, June 23rd, 1892. You know, he was born in West Africa. You got to wonder if a lot of one-Westers today would actually see him as a Hamite and not a Semite. Know what I'm saying? His father may have been a Jewish Negro, though it is unlikely. His mother was almost certainly a Christian. At an early age, the family left West Africa and moved to St. Kitts, British West Indies. There, Matthew spent the formative years of his early life. Matthew came to New York in 1913. Okay, I'm going to stop there for a second. So, you already have Reverend William Christian in the much more active and long-lasting as far as what he established. Crowdy doing their thing throughout the USA. This is still early, but remember, this doctrine appeared first, from what we know of now, in the 1890s, 1892. So he's coming after it's been around a while. And the information I've received so far, I'm still looking for primary sources on this. So what I'm about to tell you is something I'm still working on, is that Crowdy had established, Crowdy's people, perhaps, a congregation in Harlem, and that Matthew either came out of or was directly influenced by that to start the Commandment Keepers. The timeline on that would be possible and make sense. I'm actually talking to somebody in Crowdy's group to try to figure that out. We're still working on that. But notice the time here. Matthew came to New York in 1913 at a time when, because of the large-scale immigration of propertyless Negroes from the South and the West Indies to the great northern urban centers, the Negroes naturally felt insecure in their new surroundings. This time was ripe for leaders to arise. So, I'm reading something from 1959. There's going to be things in here that smack of bigotry, prejudice, racism, stereotypes, that kind of thing. It doesn't mean it's not academic, because unfortunately a lot of academics talked this way back then. It was considered normal, not saying it was okay, but I'm not going to alter what they wrote. I'm going to try to just read it as it is, and I think you guys understand I'm reading from something from 1959. Matthew came to New York I already read that. During his first 6 years in New York, Matthew did odd jobs throughout the city. According to Newsweek of September 1934, reports that he took up professional boxing and wrestling. Now that's fascinating. First of all, I'd like someone to track that down. Newsweek, September 1934, look up Matthew. Someone find that. Number one. Number two, here's what's interesting. Matthew also was into physical combat sports, and nothing wrong with that, obviously. My sons are into that. But it's also interesting, we've got Edward Meredith Bibbins, whom the one Westers ignorantly call Abba Bivens, who was apparently a boxer and was known to get off of his soapbox and box people down and then get back on. So it's just interesting, that tie. Here he first came into contact with white Jewry at large. Attracted by the Garveyites, he also met another West Indian named Arnold Josiah Ford, who propagated the doctrine that the, quote, so-called Negroes were really the children of the house of Israel, end quote. Notice how you've already got this so-called language, right? So this so-called language goes all the way back to the Commandment Keepers. That's why when you hear one Westers say today, so-called, they're getting it from language, honestly, that's, almost 100 years old. These guys have been around. There is a footnote, by the way, I'm skipping for now. I'm going to read this footnote last it's an entry beginning footnote. It is so, what's the word? Prescient. I think the word is prescient. Someone look that up. Prescient. I think it almost looks like it's spelled prescient, but I believe it's prescient. It's a prescient footnote, and I'm going to use that word again and again. I know I'm using it right, may not be pronouncing it exactly right, but someone look it up and put it in. You'll see, and hold on to that definition. Okay, continuing on here. Matthew, realizing that he was a Hebrew, organized his own congregation with a nucleus of 8 men. When Matthew first opened his congregation in 1919, its legend read. So this is the, little charter or whatever, legend from when the school first started in 1919. This is wild. Number one, if you know anything about Crowdy's congregation, you'll know that Crowdy's congregation had certain names in it. And you'll see that Matthew's congregation used derivatives of that name, showing that definitely Matthews was after Crowdy, which is already known and established, but also indicates he was influenced by him because he took part of his group's name. Here's the name, and listen what it's going to say. This shows you that Hebrew Israelism has always flirted with Christianity and the Old Testament Judaistic ways at the same time. Watch this. Here's the name. This is a direct quote, okay? This is archaeological, this inscription, in essence. Listen, this is the outside one. Listen to the inside one. You're here. I'm doing a lot of preface, but stay on topic. The commandment keepers, holy church of the living God, pillar and ground of the truth. That's from Crowdy, which is originally from the New Testament. Services Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Bishop A.W.W.A. Matthews. So that's the outside one. Listen to the inside one. Inside was found this inscription. People, prepare to meet thy God. Jesus saves. What? That is from the New York Sun, January 29th, 1929. Even though these folks were deemed as following Black Judaism, they're saying Jesus, first of all, notice it's Jesus. Jesus saves way back then. This is wild. There's a lot here. Keep on following. We're learning about this history together. This is from a journal article in 1959. Let's read. He, as had Ford before him, took some Hebrew lessons from an immigrant Jewish teacher to whom he presented himself as a Jew. Matthew also acquired details of Orthodox Jewish ritual, the names of Jewish institutions, as well as a few words of Yiddish. Calling himself rabbi, he purchased Jewish ritual materials, an ark, a scroll, prayer shawls, skull caps, and rented rooms on 131st Street, Manhattan, where he established his synagogue and rabbinical college. He put out a sign that Hebrew was taught, and also spoke on street corners where he practiced healing and preached the following doctrine. So Matthew claimed the ability to heal, and he preached on street corners. These guys have been doing that a long time. So this next part I'm reading is from a direct sermon. This is transcribed from something he spoke orally. Are you ready? So listen to this Rabbi Wentworth Matthews sermon. Listen carefully. Are you ready? This is a quote by him. During slavery, they took away our name, language, religion, and science, as they were the only possessions the slaves had, and they were pumped full of Christianity to make them more docile. The word Negro is a badge of slavery, which comes from the Spanish word Niger, meaning black thing. Those who identify themselves with Negroes identify themselves with black things, not human beings. All so-called Negroes are the lost sheep of the house of Israel, which can be proved from Scripture, and they all have birthmarks that identify their tribe. And then watch, he actually gives it basically an example in a way. Listen to this next line. Jacob was a black man because he had smooth skin, end quote. If you read my first book, Barack Obama versus the Black Hebrew Israelites, in it I quote another place where Matthew says that evidence that Jacob was a black man was that he had smooth skin. And then the word was invariably as the black man has. Now I'm going to read another footnote here. This is from the Amsterdam News. Someone needs to look this up too. Amsterdam News, September 8, 1934. Here's a quote. This is from the person writing the article in the Amsterdam News, which is a footnote in this article. He will never tire of explaining, as he always does to anyone who wants to know, why Christianity does not belong to the Negro. And then he says this is Matthew now, we were all originally Jews. Now, one reason that's fascinating, if that's the case, why is there an inscription on the inside of your synagogue that says Jesus saves? So much confusion here, ladies and gentlemen. But did you hear this? I want to show it to you. My finger is right where it is. It says people have birthmarks that identify their tribe. Do you see this? It's on the screen. They all have birthmarks that identify their tribe. These dudes have been looking for a way to try to identify people's tribes for a long time. Matthew's version, and Matthew's the one who taught Edward Meredith Bibbins. Matthew's version was to study your birthmarks. And later in the article, we're actually going to give an example. Hebrew Israelites don't know this. They don't know about all the failed attempts their religion has made prior to them because they don't study their own history. We now know it. This is crazy, man. Birthmarks. The group began to make progress when the Depression, surprisingly, halted it. Unlike most other Negro cult leaders, example given, Elder Robinson and Father Divine, only a hardcore did not leave Matthew. But as the 30s began to roll around, Matthew gradually assumed undisputed leadership of Harlem's black Jews. And that's cited, we got Bratz is the one that's cited there. Okay, trying to get my volume right here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me make a couple changes here, get this volume how I want it. Okay, don't want to crack it too much, though. In 1929, the group had 100 members. That's according to the New York Sun in January 1929. So 100 members. Started with 8 in 1919. Now, 10 years later, had 100. Are you listening? In 1929, the group had 100 members, mostly women. And by the way, I've seen pictures from the congregation. It bears that out. By 1930, it had risen to 175. So in a year, they picked up 75 new members. And look at this. According to the Amsterdam News, September 24th, 1930, cited here, including 6 white Jews, most likely Ashkenazim, 6 white Jews as well. In September 1931, the New York Amsterdam News reported, quote, that the congregation numbers about 200 with 6 white Jews as members. Sorry about that crack if it distorted a little bit. Are you listening to these numbers? It's going to jump more and more. Listen to these numbers jump. This is a very important article. It comes from primary research and sources available at the time, and I'm gonna read a footnote talking about that here at the end. This is showing the rapid growth at that time. Isn't this fascinating? And they would look at birthmarks to determine your tribe. All right. By February 1st, 1934, it jumped to 405. And the footnote here says, all Negro. That's according to the Philadelphia Tribune, February 1st, 1934. So this is some rapid growth, all under Matthew. By September of that same year, the number of congregants had increased to 500. So just in the year, they went from basically 400 to 500. And in 1936, there were 550 members. And by the way, all the sources are cited here. So we've got the Philadelphia Tribune, Amsterdam News, Afro-American, February 8th, 1936. And later on, we're going to get into Ebony, May 1957, page 96. And by the end, he's going to get up to 8,000. Okay, continuing on here. In that same year, Matthew was addressed by the New York Amsterdam News as Rabbi W.A. Matthew, pastor of the rapidly growing Harlem Synagogue, end quote. By 1949, the Sunday News reported that there are 3,000 Jewish Negroes in New York City and that 800 are members of the Commandment Keepers. So in 1919, he had 8. In 1949, he had 800. And in May 1957, Matthew claimed 1,100 members in his own congregation. Now, that's in the congregation. The national following of Matthew at that time was 8,000. So that's the first section of this. Again, we are reading from 1959, a journal called Judaism. So this is academic. This is academic work from 1959. It does have some offensive language in it. And I think people understand that. I'm reading that because I want you to get the unaltered version. Here we go, next section. In the early 20s, Matthews learned of the romantic story of the Falashas. And then there's a little article here. The best recent brief report in English on the Falashas is Henrietta Schmerler's article in the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, 1941, volume 4. Authentic Jewish Negroes of Ethiopia. So here the author is saying that he understands and views the Jews of Ethiopia, sometimes called the Falashas, as authentic, okay? So now Matthew's discovering them. So Matthew is discovering them in the early 20s, and watch this. Discovered them, and here's what it says, and immediately discovered that he himself was a Falasha. So always trying to find ways to connect themselves to something else, right? Ethiopia, it may be noted, as Brotz points out, is very familiar to all American Negroes because it is the wonderful Ethiopia of the Bible. The fact, too, that Haile Selassie calls himself the Lion of Judah has convinced Matthew that he is really a Falasha who does not eat pork. That's from Brotz's book I showed in the beginning, page 329. As will be shown later, Matthew has increasingly emphasized his close spiritual kinship with the Jews of Ethiopia. And there's some pictures online that prove this point. Matthew holds services Friday evenings, Saturday mornings, Sunday evenings, and all major Jewish holidays. The men attire themselves in their best, and the women wear the white garb generally worn by women saints. An excellent photo of this practice can be seen in Ebony, May 1957, pages 96 and 97. Someone needs to get a hold of that Ebony article as well. Matthew holds, I already read that, my bad. The synagogue, by saints in the holiness churches. The synagogue is now located at 87 West 128th Street and Lenox Avenue. No one knows Hebrew correctly. So the author of this spoke directly to the congregation, was there, and is making the observation that no one knew Hebrew properly. Listen to this. No one knows Hebrew correctly, and as was made evident in the interview which the writer had with Matthew. So the writer of this, Ehrman, interviewed Matthew. Now look at this. No one knows Hebrew correctly. Actually, what it says is none know Hebrew correctly. I believe there's a typo there as well. And I was correcting it. SIC, as they say. And as was made evident in the interview which the writer had with Matthew, he could hardly quote a partial verse from the scriptures in Hebrew. So Matthew really wasn't even able to quote the Bible in Hebrew, is what he's saying. When the high point of the services is reached, all the male members of the congregation file up to Matthew and recite publicly their Hebrew names. So they say their Hebrew names. And listen to this. Listen carefully. This is why I wanted to read this article, okay? All the male members of the congregation file up to Matthew and recite publicly their Hebrew names and the tribe which Matthew has assigned to them upon, quote, examination of their bodies for critical birthmarks. Bruh. Matthew would look at people's bodies for critical birthmarks and then assign them a Hebrew tribe based upon that. Do you hear what I'm saying to you? Do you hear? Do you hear? Bro, that's why the 12 tribes chart was like, in a weird way, like an improvement. At least you ain't got to be looking at people's birthmarks. Yo, how personal did this get? Some people have birthmarks in different kind of places. I hope it was only like publicly visible birthmarks. You know what I mean? But it's going to get worse because Matthew actually examined the writer of this and he gave him a tribe based upon his birthmark. Are you going to, what I'm going to read next, you are not going to believe. You're not going to believe. In fact, most Hebrews like to watch this are going to think it's just a bunch of lies, my guess, or those make excuses for it. No one will seriously deal with it unless the Lord moves on their heart, which is what I pray. The tribe which Matthew has assigned to them upon examination of their bodies for critical birthmarks. Matthew has shown this writer the all-seeing eye located on his nose and the spot where his sixth finger was cut off at birth, indicating that he was of the tribe of Reuben. Read it again. The tribe... When the high point of the service is reached, all the male members of the congregation file up to Matthew and recite publicly their Hebrew names and the tribe which Matthew has assigned to them upon examination of their bodies for critical birthmarks. Matthew has shown this writer the all-seeing eye located on his nose and the spot where his sixth finger was cut off at birth, indicating that he was of the tribe of Reuben. They all line up behind Rabbi Matthew as he leads them around the synagogue singing "Round the Walls of Jericho" or "Marching to Zion." At this time, emotions are given free play. And then here's a quote. Ooh, it's got one thing in here I'm not going to say, but I'll show you on the screen. This is something Matthew said. Well, what I'm going to show you on the screen here. Quote, although enthusiasm exists in their worship service, it is far less than the practices prevailing in the holiness churches. The black Jews abstain from possessions, swooning, speaking in tongues, and excessive screaming, all of which Matthew regards as beep. All of which Matthews regards as, you may not be able to see it, but you could, basically it says inward issues. Okay, and that is in Bratz. That is in Bratz, page 336. So that's the way Matthews would talk about what he viewed as like black folk religion. And he would use the N-word to describe it. Okay. Continuing on. But as Bratz shows, the ritual, the worship service, and even their basic theological conceptions have never departed very far from that which was familiar to these people in their childhood religious experience. These are the spontaneous sermon, the hymns, Protestant hymns with Old Testament references. And then there's a footnote, but the hymns they are singing are more like spirituals than Jewish music for the ceremonies, while Orthodox contain certain non-Jewish innovations. That's from PM's Weekly, December 8th, 1940, which the author says this account is extremely sympathetic. A group of authentic Jewish philosophes known to the writer call Matthew and his services, quote, reformed. Most of the members of the group are West Indian in origin. Each member is assessed 1/10 of his or her monthly earnings, with about 70% women. Oh, I read the footnote too quickly. I'm sorry. Now you'll understand where that goes from. But notice here, the group's got about 70% women, the commandment keepers at this time. Matthew's leadership in it is unchallenged. This is seen in the fact that he has undivided control over all the finances of the group. All in the group try to come as close to and be as intimate with him as possible. This feeling is acknowledged by Matthew and makes him feel both popular and confident. Popular to such an extent, in fact, that he has envisaged the conversion of at least 500,000 more Negroes to Judaism within a short period. And that's from Bratz's book, page 334. One enthusiastic Negro newspaper in 1935, the Afro-American, February 8th, 1936, had an article on Matthew, the subtitle of which read, "Rabbi Matthew hopes to reconvert millions to Hebrew religion." In this article, Matthew outlined his plan for the conversion of 2/3 of the colored population of America to the Orthodox Hebrew faith, end quote. Now, that's interesting because these days they're saying, the one Westerners say it's going to be 1/3, you know. But that quote is from, I'm going to read the footnote here. I'm reading the footnotes in this guy. Footnote 26. Matthew has also declared himself to be the messenger of Haile Selassie in his work. You hear that? The Philadelphia Tribune of February 1st, 1934 states that Matthew let it be known, quote, that he was ordained in New York City, end quote, while the Amsterdam News of September 19th, 1936 states that Matthew, quote, received his ordination papers from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia in May 1931, end quote. And there's a photo collection online where you can actually see the papers referenced. I just looked at it today. It's in a collection. I can send someone the link if they want. It's in black and white. Besides the latter, both the above quoted Afro-American and Bratz are familiar with Matthew's claim as, quote, official representative of the Falashan Order of African Jews, with full authority to practice all rites of the Falashan faith, end quote, and as chief rabbi with credentials from Haile Selassie, end quote. This is wild. The commandment keepers dude was like taking inspiration from Haile Selassie and calling himself chief rabbi. Thus we see that he staked out this claim between 1934 and 1936. Did Italy's invasion of Ethiopia in 1935-1936, which brought Haile Selassie to the attention of the world, have anything to do with Matthew's new claim? Sherry Abel, in her article on Negro Jews in the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, Volume 8, 1942, page 145, states that Matthew was, quote, ordained by the chief rabbi of the Ethiopian Falashas as well as by the Ethiopian National Church, end quote. No mean accomplishment for any man. Unfortunately, most of the information given by the above writer regarding Matthew's origins and subsequent career is merely a restatement of Matthew's hokum. This is a common problem we see with these guys. They claim for themselves things they never earned, places they've never been, people they've never met. I remember one time Ron Shields told me that he talked to Bruce Metzger. And I told him, hey, now this is on a live stream. He deleted it as soon as it was over. And I respect him like Ron Shields, but he was overstating the case. And I was like, bro, on your timeline that you just gave in this show, Metzger was dead when you said you talked to him. And then he like tried to change, the fact that he didn't say that, and he deleted the live stream as soon as it was over. He said he talked to Bruce Metzger. You've got Kelly and what's the other dude, his cousin William Brown down there, both claiming that they're doctors. You got Hakah claiming he's a professor and a Talmudic scholar. You got people claiming they're the Holy Spirit. You got people claiming they're Moses and David. You want to say it's a bunch of crazies, but it's not. It's a bunch of people who are listening to the doctrine of demons, straight up. And who don't have a very healthy relationship with the truth, because they be lying. You know that song, right? Lying. We got Cherry over there saying he started the congregation of his in 1886 just because he wanted to try to beat Crowdy. And you see quoted all over the internet. Cherry, 1886. Well, according to census data from Cherry himself, 1920, 1930, 1940, he was 11 years old in 1886. He made that junk up. He didn't find nothing. He didn't found nothing in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And when you study Chattanooga, Tennessee from that time, you'll see he was lying. Okay, back to the main part of the article. I like that word, though. Hokum. 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 Okay, sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked. My bad. Excuse me. Let me recompose myself here. So he's got total control of the finances, wants 500,000, millions, blah, 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 blah. A great deal of the reasoning behind such statements lies in the leadership principle, which his devoted followers have urged on him, and which he has accepted. In this article, he declared, this is a quote from Matthew, "My mission here is to develop the Hebrew language among my people. The colored man was the original Jew. It is my duty to induce him to accept his real religion anew. The colored man was a great man as long as he could hold on to his true religion. When he lost it, he developed an inferiority complex and became the slave of the white man." Continuing on, shout out to Purely Grounded for the super chat. You know we need that love, and I appreciate it. I know this is a different type of thing, but I appreciate you very much. We need this. Matthew is now engaged in building a vast network of loyal colonies throughout America and making them economically self-sufficient. His following has raised $110,000 to buy real estate in Babylon, Long Island, and has already begun to build homes and farms on the site. That's according to Our World, pages 24-25, February 1948. Again, this is from 1959, this journal article I'm reading by Airman. All their food is now supplied to them by their farm at Wydendanch. So that's pretty interesting, the self-sufficient aspect. That's interesting, isn't it, right? Matthew has also announced that he intends to open a rabbinical college, an old age home for white and black Jews, a center for convalescents, vacationers, and children, and a factory for the production of kosher foods and wines by 1960. Now, I like some of those plans. I mean, there's some good stuff here. So it's like the Nation of Islam. It's not all bad. We would never say that. Continuing on, Matthew is also preoccupied with the necessity of strict parental control over children in order to prevent delinquency and crime. And here's what he says. This is a quote. "A notable thing about our sect is that none of our children has ever been arrested for theft or vagrancy." That's in the New York Age, September 1951. Well, Matthew, if you were leading the movement today, we could not say no one's been arrested anymore. Sexual propriety is also normal within the group, something which speaks very well for Matthew, and there's sources for that in Bratz. And here's another quote. "There is no juvenile delinquency among the children of the members, nor is there rule breaking of the type which occurs among the Muslims, whose rejection of American culture has been much more radical than that of the black Jews. Draft evasion, withdrawal of children from the city schools, and in the past, human sacrifice," saying that that's not there. The human sacrifice thing comes out of the Voodoo Cult article from Detroit. It's a long story, and it relates to some pretty wild stuff, but that's what they're citing there. Of prime importance is the fact that the members are known as good workers. So that's from Bratz, pages 336 to 337. And let me read real quick what Bratz also says. "God and business is one of the principles of our teachings. God first, business next, law and order, and law and order is the general password." Oh, that's not from Bratz. Wait, that is from Bratz. Okay. But he's quoting Matthew, it looks like there. It says also, see John A. Diaz, Black Jews in USA and Social Whirl, April 25th, 1955, pages 18 to 19. So this article is also a treasure trove of new articles and magazines covering these guys that I've never seen. But the important thing in this one, besides a few other things that we brought out to your attention, is the fact that Rabbi Wentworth Matthew used to tell people what tribe they were from by birthmarks, including claiming to be able to see in someone's nose the all-seeing eye and missing fingers indicating they were from the tribe of Reuben. This is the third final section of this journal article. In the 39 years from his organization's beginning in 1919, Matthew's nationwide following has increased 1,000-fold, from the initial 8 men who backed him to 8,000 men, women, and children throughout America. They are definitely a growing group. Matthew has set up an excellent organization which can now carry on without him. he has already provided his successor. And then there's a footnote. The new leader will be Matthew E. Stephen, who was personally created a rabbi by Matthew himself in an impressive ceremony on October 8, 1955. See New York Age Defender, October 22nd, 1955. Now, here's what is interesting. It does seem, Matthew is a good organizer and all that stuff. And, there's some leadership things that we got to say are impressive, right? But where are the commandment keepers today? Well, they didn't have enough money and they don't own their synagogue anymore. They don't have that building anymore in Harlem. They're spread throughout. It's like, to be frank with you, a number of geriatric ladies who reminisce about the good old days. Now, if you want to hear Matthew speak personally, go on my channel and put in Wentworth Matthew. And I have one of his lectures where you can actually hear the audio. It's archived audio. You can hear it for yourself. So, I try to do this historically as well for posterity, as it were. So what's interesting is, he's saying, hey, they're going to be okay, but they weren't okay. Now, the movement as a whole is, right? Here's how the article ends. As Professor Z. Scharfstein puts it, they are a warm-hearted people who are not adequately looked after. And then the footnote there says, an abortive attempt to organize the authentic Jewish falashas in America was made in 1955. See New York Age Defender, May 28, 1955, and July 16, 1955. Okay, continuing on. Last paragraph here. When the time does arrive, when they receive their proper attention from the white Jewish community, and as Negro educational and social advantages increase, those who join charismatically will drop off, while those who are sincerely interested will go on to a fuller knowledge, it is to be hoped. So what the author here, Ehrman, is saying in 1959 about Rabbi Matthew's group is that he thinks people will not need, basically, that this is his prediction. He's obviously not entirely right. His own little prediction here is that people won't need a group like Matthew's anymore, and they'll dissipate. They'll drop off. And then the other ones, hopefully, who do stick with it, will go on to full-blown Judaism. For example, like an Amari Stoudemire. That was his prediction's wrong, isn't it? I'm going to read the last footnote here, though. Considerable good work in this direction is already underway with the authentic Jewish falashas of Ethiopia. See the New York Times, March 4th, 1955. Black Jews in Israel. Our World, November 1955, pages 27 to 31. M. Ramus, The Children from Ethiopia in the Jewish Horizon, January 1956, pages 12 to 15. Shout out to Weaver J50 for a real super chat. Y'all are getting down today. Let's get the air horn! For real, thank you. You guys keep me going. Now, what happened is I poke around for stuff. And sometimes I get sidetracked with research. I have all the stuff I need to do, and then sometimes I go over here. First of all, history is fascinating, isn't it? And it's important as well. And then I love apologetics. And I love people. They're fascinating too. All of it. So, yes, I believe I have a calling from the Lord to do what I'm doing, just like hopefully you do in your state, in your life, wherever you're at. And if you don't, you'll find it. Doesn't mean I do it perfect or always right, but I'm just saying. But also there's a passion and interest, not just random curiosity. And I do care about academics, but ultimately it's spiritual. Now, saying all that, I picked this up. It took a while to get to me. Some old collector of old Jewish items had it in LA, and I was able to order it and get it off this specialty website. It wasn't even that expensive, and a physical copy came of this. And again, we're reading something from 1959. I immediately tore through this. Immediately read through it. I had read a little bit of it online, but I knew I wanted to read it. Now it's only like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages or so, but it's an article from Albert Ehrman on the Commandment Keepers. It's subtitled A Negro Jewish Cult in America Today. And yes, Jewish is put in quotation marks. The key thing that I got out of this was the number growth. The numbers. I hope you paid attention to that. That's fascinating. That's the first thing. The second thing was what I titled this. These dudes used to tell you what tribe you were from according to birthmarks on your body, and told the author of this that he had the all-seeing eye in his nose, and that since he had lost a sixth finger at birth, he was from the tribe of Reuben. So the 12 tribes chart is actually the third failed attempt by Hebrew Israelites to try to tell people what tribe they're from. This was either first, and then the second one, most likely, I don't know which one was first or second. That's why I'm saying that. But there's been 3 attempts. It looks like the one Westers now are adopting this. Looks like most of the others have given up on that. But the one Westers have this tribe that Arya gave them. This tribe chart that Arya gave him, which may be the subject of my next book. I'm still working that out. The other one was by your birth sign. Virgo, Leo, Scorpio, Gemini, and they would tell you what tribe you're from. Gorilla Hebrew even mentioned that in his debate with Garfield on the 12 tribes chart. Now, I want to read this last little thing right here, because this is the third thing that caught my attention. It was hinted at in the end of the article. Here's what's fascinating. There was just a little bit of sense. It was very prescient. Hey, Google, define prescient. See if we can hear it.
Prescient is used as an adjective to mean
Adjective.
having or showing knowledge of events before they take place, similarly to prophetic.
Having or showing knowledge to events before they take place. No. So this is kind of a prescient footnote here. And that was the third thing that caught my attention. Are you ready to listen? This is a very prescient footnote, written in 1959. While journalistic accounts of a Negro Jewish cult in Harlem have appeared from time to time, Mr. Ehrman's essay is an original documented study of its origins, growth, and activities. So this editor is recognizing this is different than just a mere journalistic account, even though it's a short article. It's original research, and the key element that he gets that I have never seen anywhere else is the numbers, and it shows really quite explosive growth. Oh, shoot. Thank you, Michelle Turner, for the super chat. You guys are too nice. It's funny. You never know which show it'll be. I never thought it would be this show where people would come through. Much love. Appreciate y'all. Okay, I see a freestyle unlocked. Great. More stuff for Sakari to make fun of me for. But who cares? Here we go. I'm continuing with this footnote. Far from being an exotic passing phenomenon, the author's conclusion points to a growing group that with cultural advancement may have to be reckoned with on the American Jewish scene. Mr. Ehrman is a graduate student at Columbia University. So he's a grad student when he wrote this. Did you hear that? This is the prescient comment. And I feel like the way the editor put the final comment there was more prescient maybe than the way the author wrote it, at least from my understanding of what's being said. But look at this. Far from being an exotic passing phenomenon, the author's conclusion points to a growing group that with cultural advancement may have to be reckoned with on the American Jewish scene. What is happening right now? That's exactly what's happening. I'm going to have to do a show on how the Canary Project is going after IOIC now. It is wild, wild stuff. What's going on? Shout out to Jim Green. Everyone, please subscribe to Jim Green, both on YouTube and on TikTok. Thank you very much, brother. Shout out to you, my friend. You do good work. Do you hear this? So, I'm going to read this one more time, and then we'll do the freestyle, okay? This is a quote from his sermon. All so-called Negroes are the lost sheep of the house of Israel, which can be proved from Scripture, and they all have birthmarks that identify their tribe. That is from a sermon that Matthew gave. And then, here on the next page, is an example of it from their liturgy. When the high point of the service is reached, all the male members of the congregation file up to Matthew and recite publicly their Hebrew names and the tribe which Matthew has assigned to them. Upon examination of their bodies for critical birthmarks, Matthew has shown this writer the all-seeing eye located on his nose and the spot where his sixth finger was cut off at birth, indicating that he was of the tribe of Reuben. Judaism, Quarterly Journal of Jewish Life and Thought from summer of 1959. Now we know that the old school Hebrew Israelites, of which Edward Meredith Bibbins and the One Westers came out of, used to tell people what tribe they were from by their birthmarks. Thank you very much. Much love. God bless. Peace out to y'all. Talk to you later.